to stick it to about 30. I've got a few questions for Nishanth, and then after, you can come on and ask some questions as well. And one of the reasons I wanted to start this series is because so often people like myself who do what I do concentrate so much on the problems that we're facing rather than the solutions. And Nishanth really inspires me with the work that he's doing and that the collective that he's a part of is doing. So I wanted to just sort of create space to listen to people tell their own stories, because so often I'm researching online to like try to collect someone's stories. And Nishanth has a beautiful way of communicating what he does. So I'm sure everyone sort of knows what agroecology is, but as most of you know, that's what I try to write about the most. And Oshadi is doing regenerative agriculture in India, growing organic cotton, and so reversing global warming, protecting the biosphere, enhancing the health of the community, and then there's so many other threads that sort of link into that. So Nishanth, do you want to talk about what it is that you do and just share a little bit about what Oshadi does?
Yeah. Hello. My name is Nishanth Chopra, and I'm the founder of Oshadi. As a few of you might know, that it is a contemporary. It started as a contemporary women's wear brand, and back in 2016, as a bridge between traditional Indian craftsmanship and modern designs and sustainably innovative materials. As we started the women's wear brand, we wanted to work with a community, like a specific community, to create these fabrications and create these garments, which could then sell in international market, and that could bridge the gap and perhaps bring them better income wage. Because when we sell domestically, they don't really have a good margin. But we started exporting them, and it started with the women's wear, and then we went to the next step, which was figuring out, like, we directly got involved in the supply chain. We realized it's not just about working with them, but it needs to be a partnership with them, because they have so many issues, with the quality or the systems which have been before. So we started working with the materials first, and we saw that, hey, the hand looms need to be improved. So we started working on improving the hand loom. We made sure we got this kind of gear, so the quality of the fabric is consistent, because a lot of people in France or England, the only difference between the looms is they have this special gear controlling the construction of the fabric on a hand loom, whereas people in India don't have. So we started working on that. And then as we started working on that, we started realizing that the composition of the fabric is not right. So we started looking into more materials, like, is organic cotton enough? And what's more? So is it tencel, or is it hemp, or is it linen? So we started exploring different materials, and we went to merino, and then we found there's another, which is like responsibly sourced merino. So we as we started with a base women's wear, then we slowly evolved into working with the community, and now improving the looms and improving the quality and the materials. And we went to the dyes. We started working with the dyes, like, is the azo-free dye good enough, or do we need God certified dye, or is God certified dye good enough, or is it natural dye, or is it natural dye that's good enough, or we need to make sure the natural dyes are not too strong, that when you leave them into the soil, it doesn't disturb the ecosystem down low. So now we figured things out till the dyeing side of things, and the only thing left unexplored was the farming. And I realized we worked with these communities in rural India, and I bumped into so many farmers here and there in the last 5 years. I learned so much about organic farming, but I never knew that this would turn out to be this way, that, I really wanted to start this organic cotton farm. And these had these traditional Indian farming principles, which I learned from different people, meeting someone or just going to these gurus who teach about traditional Indian farming. And one night I watched a movie called Mirkuturarchi Malai, which is a movie about this vicious circle, which a farmer who gets into after this green revolution. They brought in these chemicals, and to grow things fast and without pests, and the farmers are making sure the farmers are trapped in that circle, and eventually bringing down the quantities, and they give them loan, so they can't come out of the debt. And it was this crazy thing, and I just realized that it was so true. I always thought about problems, but then I thought if I think about all these issues, why don't I start something myself and, start a farm? Maybe a small farm, it's fine. It's like 1 acre. At least we could see why the things are wrong, the way they are, and learn from that and how we can probably improve that. So we started. And the next morning I wake up, I listen to a podcast and I hear about Rebecca Burgess, and I'm like, whoa, this is absolutely crazy, because everything I've been thinking about is just embedded, like, it's like incorporated within this organization. It's talking about it. She's talking about it. And I realized probably I should reach out. So I'm like cold emailing random rburgess@gmail.com or rebeccaburgess@gmail.com to see if something goes through. And luckily it went through, and she was like, hey, I absolutely love this thing. And Fibershed completely incorporates what you do. And I learned from her that the regenerative farming is very similar to what Indian traditional farming is. And she supported us with a grant and connected us to Christy Dawn, who are like our first brand partner, and they've been growing with us, and we've been growing with them for the last 3 seasons. So the farm has now grown from 5 acres to 50 acres this season. And yeah, here we are with the farming and story kind of thing.
That's an amazing story. And how long has it been since you started this project?
It's been a year.
Oh, a year. Wow, that's huge.
Actually, a year now, I think. No, it's been 1 year, 1 month, I think now. Yeah.
And you're growing indigo as well for dyeing, right?
Yeah, so we have to rotate the crop, right? So organic cotton is like our main crop, but alongside organic cotton, we have a lot of different crops, intercrop. And I realized that a lot of the issues with natural dyeing is you don't know if the flowers are grown organically. So which in turn is like, if you're growing a flower inorganically and you're using it as a natural dye, is it better than chemical dyes? Like, so we thought, okay, so we have another 6 months. What could we do? So we had like these green manure crops, which could give back to the soil. And we realized that indigo was one of those nitrogen fixing crops.
Yeah.
And it was kind of handy because, we wanted to do something, and, I always wanted to plan my own natural dyes. So everything worked together, and we started doing indigo. Our first dye extract is already out now. So we are going to start dyeing with our own indigo for the first time next week. Yeah.
That's amazing. I thought you guys have been around for a lot longer because of how much you've done. And 12 months, that's incredible. It gives me a lot
of people think that, but it's just 3 seasons. So it's been like a year and a half. Like, it's a start of the second half, like, the 6 month, but it's 1 year plus a start of the next season. But I think we were fortunate to learn so much in such a short span of time, and, incorporate it really well, like, because the people who are working with us, they were really supportive, and I kind of like met these people at the right time, right place in the right time, and everything fell into place at once.
It sounds very serendipitous, sort of the way everything's kind of come together for you, like you said, right place, right time, and right people, right community kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's always been this way, like for the last 5 years for me. Like, I would think about something, and, there's this issue going on, this is the problem, and what can I do to solve it? And, I end up meeting someone and like, hey, I do this. I was like, whoa, I need to, like, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So it's been kind of like magical the last 4 years for me, I think. Yeah.
That's an incredible way to describe your job and the project that you're doing, to have it be like sort of magically connected. I think that's what everybody wants, and kind of one of the things that we're lacking. And it seems like a lot of people who are working with the land tend to have a lot of experiences like this that are sort of things sort of come together naturally to support the work that they're doing.
Yeah, like there's a lot of setbacks. Like, I don't end up meeting just one person. I get no's from like 100 people, and you just need like one yes, to make things happen. So it looks like kind of, very light for me when I think about it like back, but I still remember like, literally calling like 50 people a day, just trying to figure things out. Hey, I need this. I was so lucky that, I just emailed Rebecca Burgess, and she believes in me, even though she doesn't know who I am. And it's just like my thought process in an email, and she decides to like help me out. But there were so many no's before that, because I've been trying to do farming for like 2 years before that. Yeah. And, I think it's the right place and at the right time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the regenerative, the return to like place-based land practices, and like reconnecting with how your ancestors would have worked the land, and like you've said in the last conversation that we had, and Deborah Barker mirrored the same thing when I spoke to her. about sort of flipping the fashion industry on its head and empowering farmers and artisans to create the type of environment that is a healthy working environment for them and for their communities, rather than having that dictated from the brand. What are some of the issues with cotton in India, like with regular cotton, and how does sort of Oshadi's land-based practices using these ancient Indian land practices, how does that sort of solve it? What have the people in your collective said or felt? Or
I mean, like, it's just not problem with, like, not just a problem with the cotton, but it's the problem with the entire supply chain. It's the system which has evolved in such a wrong way over the course of time, because, you know, it's like, it goes long back, like 400 years or 500 years of like colonialism, and, you know, people like getting something from here and calling it theirs, and, you know, that kind of mindset, and trying to find things like which they would probably think like, you know, I went to study in England, and I realized what a crazy potential like the weaving community in India has. And, you know, it's why it hasn't been explored. Like, so many luxury brands work with Indian like farmers, or like Indian mills. Like, you know, they'd never come out like openly about, hey, we do our embroidery in India. Like, I'm pretty sure like most luxury ready-to-wear brands, they make, even luxury haute couture brands, like, you know, make some of their stuff in India. I know some other places, but I've never heard them speaking about how a person has worked for, like, how there were like 20 people working for like 500 hours or like 1,000 hours just to make that dress happen. And it's just about like this actress in Hollywood wearing this, and, you know, it's all about that. And it's a completely different mindset that the fashion industry on its whole has. And that way, like, the real people who like work hard, if you see like the most hardworking person in the supply chain is like a farmer, because he goes into the fields at like 9, he or she's going into the field at 9 a.m. and, you know, she's like there till like 5 p.m 6 p.m. And the first day I go into the fields, I couldn't stand there for more than an hour. It's so sunny, like it's so hot in India. It's crazy. Like, you literally like start to melt if you're there more than an hour. I'm sure like a lot of you guys have like visited India, and you know what I'm talking about when I talk about summer. But it's absolutely crazy that they are doing that 365 days. Like, you know, most farmers, they don't have a Sunday, because you need to take care of a plant. You know, in the same way you take care of a baby, you don't have Sundays. Like, if you leave like one day, things change. If there's like a pest attack and you decide like, no, I'm going to take a Sunday off, it doesn't work that way. And those people are the ones who have like a huge burden on them, because just to give you an example, like 6 months ago before lockdown, the price of the cotton is like the same, right? So the price of the cotton is same as what it is now. How is that even possible? Like, 6 months ago, everything was fine. 6 months after, like, we've been through this huge lockdown of 6 months and maybe even a year now, you know? And how are the prices, like the country's economies going down? Like, you can see the GDP is going down, but why is this cotton price still the same? You know, like, I don't really know. It's a very distorted system. You don't know what's going on. We started doing our own cotton. We realized that we were paying everyone fairly. We were following all these organic, regenerative practices with cover crops. The price of the cotton we make, like, it's 3 times more than the cost of like what a normal cotton is. I just like find it so hard to rationalize, like, why is the price of the cotton? That's because, like, you know, even the organic farmers, you know, they work on contract basis, where you give them like a specific field and you say this is the rate. How do you define a rate, like, you know, decide a rate without, like, some farmer in South India is going through this drought, or some farmer in like North is like facing floods, and it can't be the same. Like, it can't be consistent over a period of time.
And falling on them, like you were saying in our last conversation, all the risk falls on the farmer, and the farmer has no power to dictate or to guide how the weather is going to go, or you know, the effects of global warming. And so they end up taking all the risk and suffering from any setbacks instead of everyone.
There's no way, like, there's no risk on any spinning mill, because he comes into it, he controls like 10,000 acres of farmers, and like there are probably 10,000 different farmers, and they can't decide what the price of the cotton is. It's the farmers who need to decide that, because it's their business. You know, it's not like a spinning mill's who's working hard. Like, the spinning mill is deciding a fabric for a brand, or like a weaving mill is deciding fabric price for a brand, like, hey, I'm going to sell this to you for $10. But why is the same company deciding what the farmer needs to sell the cotton for? You know what I mean? Like, it's bizarre when you think about it, how the system is set up. And what we are trying to do with our own supply, we are trying to rethink the supply chain, where I don't think our setup is completely like, it's complete yet. We are just starting to do it. But what we are trying to do is like start leasing a land and making sure like we don't decide the price of the cotton. We have a brand partner. We have a few brand partners. We tell them like, hey, you need to lease a land. So you're basically adopting a land. And it can give you an yield of like 1,000 meters. But if things go like things are not okay with the weather, it can give you an yield of like 500 meters or something. So we know them, like, we created this plan. So even if they had like 500 meters, they would break even. It's not that, they would face a big setback. You see what I mean? But if a farmer loses that money, he goes to streets. Like in India, there's no government support or economical support for any individual or any citizen in India. So if you don't have money, like you have to go out. Like that's why, and that's why there's such a high suicide rate in India, because a lot of these farmers get like such a huge loan, they're not able to pay back, and they have such a huge pressure from the society that, hey, this guy is like, you live a good life and all of a sudden you're in the streets. So they can't face that kind of burden, and they commit suicides and stuff. So what we did is like, we are not going to put the burden on the farmer. What we're going to do is like lease a land from them and grow. We have a lease rate, and then we have this rate of the cotton, which is decided not before we farm, but it's after we harvest, and we decide, okay, this is going to be the price per meter, and this is for the spinning, and this is for the weaving. And all of the people who work with us, they not just get like minimum wage, but they get like living wage or even twice. Some of the people who, we do a lot of things in like a work basis instead of paying a salary. So if they end up doing this set of money, for example, as the seamstress, so who are in our like C2So supply chain, they get like 3 times more than like what a normal minimum wage is. But because the minimum wage is not sufficient to live a good life, like it can just get people through and make sure their kids come back and become like these workers and employees. They don't have a platform to show the skills and come up in life. You see what I mean? So the minimum wage is this kind of system which is set up where the workers end up remaining workers, their kids, everyone, like, they get into this cycle, and no one can become independent. So when they don't become independent, their kids start working for the next generation of businessmen.
Yeah.
And yeah.
There's not, one of my teachers about regenerative agriculture, Finian Makepeace from Kiss the Ground, he explained to me that like regeneration is about creating environments that other beings can thrive in, and that has human beings and non-human beings, but especially for farmers to be out, like if you're really thriving, then your children can choose to do whatever they want to do in their life, and they're not forced to become a farmer, or they're able to create a farming life that is abundant for them in every sense of the word, not just money monetarily, but also creating an environment where they have a happy life and a fruitful life.
Yeah, and a lot of the thought process like comes here because the people, like the businessmen or like whoever it is, the brands, or they decide to control someone's life, like whether someone has like happiness or like someone has sadness, because that kind of mentality is this colonial mentality where like someone else who's in power, or someone else who has like this wealth status or something, he gets to decide like what someone with a lower wealth can do or can buy or can like eat or can sleep. That's how things work in India. Like if you see some of the workers in India, they don't get to sit on the same table and eat. Like you'd never see it. It's not common. You can't sit on the same table as the person who you work for, and they have like a different chair, or they need to sit down on the floor to eat. It's absolutely crazy. Like I didn't realize it until I studied abroad, and then I came back in. I was like, whoa, like this is not how, like until I was in India, I thought this was the standard, like people are supposed to do that, and he's working for it. And then I go abroad and come back, and it's like, what kind of system has this like colonialism created in India? Like it's continuing, because the education the teachers, what they teach in India is it's something which British has taught us, like, or Europeans, they have this like education which is being taught in India. So everything that's Indian is now not Indian anymore. It's like some other country or like some other race, like controlling these kind of things. But
and controlling the narrative as well. Like I mean, you were talking about too as well, like this narrative that racial capitalism sort of says, like, oh, we're going to save this other society by giving them work through the system of supremacy that we've created. And it's this narrative that makes us think that somehow we're helping when we, you know, buy fast fashion or whatever, that these people wouldn't have a job without us consuming. And it's a completely, like, it's like you've been saying this whole time, like the system is designed to confuse the reality of what we actually live in, which, like you've created, is this, like, this collective that stretches from India all the way to England with Story MFG, or, you know, all the way to America with Christy Dawn, and each part of that circle is supporting the other. It's not one way. It's kind of like, yeah.
No, I think there's another way of looking at it. Like, you know, the world from that side thinks they're supporting us, but like from our perspective, you know, we are taught with this, like this thing of giving things, you know. So for probably 500 years, India and probably Africa has always given something. Like, you know, they've been like everything they've been asked for, everything is given. Like, you want cotton at this price, take it. Like, but they end up thinking that they're helping us, but you know, in Indians, they have this mentality of giving, you know, that's like, you know, that's how you treat your guests. You give things and you do things. And that kind of becomes like this, it's embedded in a lot of Indians that, you know, they have to give no matter what. Because I met so many Indians while I was studying abroad, and they would be so insecure about themselves, like, you know, speaking to a white person, or, you know, because that's like, even now, like in India, if you'd see, right, if you go to like a really high boarding school or something, you know, if you speak in Hindi, you'll be looked down upon. You have to speak in English to, it's, you know, you see what I'm trying to say? It's like
Yeah, it's like
being
deeply
seated
embedded.
inside it. It's deeply embedded. And, you know, when I go abroad and I meet like some of the Indian people there, and I was like, whoa, why is he afraid of talking to this guy? Like, why does he, like, you know, subconsciously believes that there's someone else above him or like something like that, you know what I mean? And that kind of like got like into my head about 3 or 4 years ago, because I started going to Paris and I kind of felt that myself, and I was like, I'm going to stand for this and I'm not going to give in. Like, a lot of people are scared, that afraid that the brands would stop working with them, and you know, they wouldn't earn any income. For me, I didn't have that kind of pressure, because uh, fortunately I have a good family who can support me, like, you know, with food, shelter, and all that stuff. So even if I had to lose, like, I'd come back to a bed. You see what I mean? Like, it's nothing more I've got to lose. And I thought I need to stand for myself. And, you know, it's not just standing for myself, but it's every brand I'm going to work with is going to talk publicly about like what we are doing. And, you know, because the weavers, they work absolutely hard. They're weaving like 4 meters a day. And the 4,000 meters doesn't come from a machine. Like, you get, it's 50 weavers working on those 4,000 meters for like 90 days. And, you know, that's when you end up getting like absolutely sell out dresses, or your story that it's hand woven in India, or like your thing. So, you know, like, I think it was really important for us. And that's why it took us like a long time to get where we are. Like in 5 years, you know, it's 5 years of absolutely no income or like nothing. But I think it was really important to stand there, you know. And
yeah, well, I think it's Robin Wall Kimmerer from Braiding Sweetgrass talks a lot about how the narrative that this society has created, like you've talked so much about this hierarchy or the system of supremacy, or thinking that you're lesser than, or being told that you're lesser than, is just a story that we tell ourselves. It's not real. And so what you're doing is not even recreating that story. You're telling the truth of what the reality is, and embedding the story of provenance, like the story of where things come from, into each thread that comes through Oshadi Collective, which I think is really beautiful. And I think Fibershed, you know, as a movement, however you want to sort of look at it, of people who are creating with place-based land practices and honoring the entire, you know, step of the way to creating something, and telling the story of all the people who came along the way. It's so important.
yeah, well, like getting to the story and people talking about like working with us, it took us a lot of back and forth, you know, just making sure like brands understand and they agree to, you know, what I'm trying to say, because it's not conventional where like a luxury brand or like a contemporary brand's talking about the makers, you know. Like, have you ever seen like a luxury brand from Paris saying that, hey, this artisan has like worked so much on our dress? You know, it's not the normality of how the fashion world works, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, But at least I think it's a start now, like people are trying to, like there's so many people other than me, like in India or, in Africa, just standing for what they stand for. And, no matter what happens, you keep up to that. So, people, that's when, like we can't change things in our own, like, probably in our lifetime, but at least you leave a trail so people can follow and, take it from there.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to look at it. And again, that sort of like indigenized way of looking at the world, where you're investing in the future generations and the people to come. Or, I mean, I've talked about this in terms of the property that we rent here. Like, we regenerate the soil in this garden, not because we'll benefit from it, but because the earth benefits from it, and anyone else who comes into this garden, after our lease is up or whatever, becomes part of that story. I wanted to spend the last sort of 10 minutes-ish before the Zoom cuts us off, letting a few people who are here ask questions. So if anyone has a question for Nishanth, you can just unmute yourself and turn your video on. Just feel free to go ahead. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask?
Yeah, hi. I'm Deborah from South East Fibershed, and actually I saw that Justine is here as well from the Northwest Fibershed. And together it's the Northwest, the Southwest and the Southeast that make up Fibershed UK. But it's really, I'm loving the conversation. Thank you so much. Really exciting to hear what you're doing. And I'm so impressed you've done it so quickly, because I think we're taking longer, doing it slower. But I wondered whether you're able to dress the people, clothe the people that are around the area that you're working, or are they already working with local materials themselves to clothe themselves?
We haven't been dressing the local people, because in order to do that at the moment, we don't really have like a capacity to get the cotton. But what we are doing is making sure the people who work with are independent. So so for example, a farmer's family started working with it at the same time last year. It's been a year and they don't work with us anymore. Like the wife doesn't, because now she's independent enough. She's bought her own goats. She has her own cow. And we don't want to get back into that same space where, where they rely on us and, we give them clothing or we give them food or, we give them, but it's not like, it's a very Japanese, like, I don't really know how to say it in Japanese, but what that saying says is, you don't give a fish, you teach someone how to fish. And that's when they can eat endlessly, they eat every day. And when this person decides, like, not to work with us, we're really upset, because they played like one of the main roles in making things happen. But at the same time, it was like, we were really proud that it's been like 365 days, and you could like probably change someone's life in just 365 days. That guy has been like a farmer. His wife's been a farmer for the last 50 years or 40 years or something. And now she doesn't rely on me or like anyone else to, live her life or, take her livelihood forward. See what I mean?
Yeah. Actually, I probably didn't explain myself well. I mean, that's really interesting to know, but I also meant, do the local people wear the clothes that you're making? Is there a, because the Fibershed here, we're trying to kind of clothe the people from the resources that we have in this geographical area, and then they get used by the people in the region.
So people, the first thing is like the fabrications we are making with the cotton from the farm. I do not think traditional textiles or traditional like suiting or like a shirting would look good. So some of the clothes I wear, like with the baggy pants and like things like that, people think it's a bit funny to walk around with like these trousers or these kind of materials. But of course, like if they're, sometimes they buy some linen from us and they stitch their own shirts. People who work with us, they get some linens and just the base fabric and they make their own clothes. But I don't think like local people would be down to wear like these dresses or these baggy trousers or something.
Thank you.
Rosie, I saw you unmuted yourself. You want to ask a question?
Oh yeah. Hi. I'm super interested in this project. And I'm just interested in more the processing and the spinning. So like, how do you take everything from being in the field to becoming the final product? Did you have to invest in lots of spinning mills, or is that infrastructure that like already existed
So for us,
in your area?
sorry, it's already existing. Like the entire cotton supply chain is already existing here. But what we are trying to do is like we're trying to convince mills to set up this micro spinning setup within the farm or next to the farm. So what they could probably do is like partner with the farmers and teach like the wives of the farmers to spin stuff. And last season we didn't do it that way, but we are aiming to do it like from 2021. That's what our aim is, like setting up a small spinning setup. But what we do now is there's other spinning partners, and who the person who could probably turn around like the fastest, were like given priority to spin our stuff. But in longer term, like the same time next year, probably there'd be spindles set up in some farmer's house who could probably be interested. And they smaller farm they form a small community, and there are like 5 farmers and they have their own spindles. Or we create this universal, like a common fiber shed, like where people can come and gin stuff and take it back home, and they can spin it, they give us the yarn. It needs a lot of, like, as it needs a huge investment to make that happen, because supply chain is like a very different, like currently. But yeah, that's the goal. But to answer your question, we did it with some local spinning partners. Yeah.
Listen. Justine, do you want to ask a question as well?
Yes, please. Hi, everybody. Hi, Deborah, as well. I know you mentioned me before. I was on a webinar with Sophia Minnie, who wrote the book Slave to Fashion, last week. And I posed the question, because it kind of, the conversation moved over to sustainability as well, obviously. And I posed the question, can we really be sustainable until the UK starts growing our own fibres and dyes? Because obviously it's a question of reducing air miles, as well as reducing exploitation out of the supply chain. And her response was that actually the West owes the global South a huge debt. And it kind of seemed to, she seemed to kind of say that almost we should keep, importing and exporting from the global South, because otherwise what are they going to do? So I just wondered what your perspective on that was. Could we be doing harm by regionalizing our manufacturing?
I mean, that's good for, definitely good for UK's economy, or like, to regionalize the thing. And at the moment, I don't think India or like Africa currently, like, I mean, export, they can really earn things like really fast. There's like bigger margins, bigger things. If you sell in India, you'd probably make like 1 cent. And if you sell something in America, you'd be earning $1. $1 and 1 cent is like huge difference. You see what I mean? Like, I think like if the business currently stops with the exports, there's going to be a huge like employment gap, and I don't even think that's even possible. Like, it can't feed the consumers' demand. And to set up a supply chain in UK, like how would you probably grow like cotton? Because that's not, you can't grow cotton in UK. You probably can do wool and supply chain under that. But
linen, I think, is our kind of substitute.
Yeah, linen, hemp, and that. But then I think it's going to completely. That's not even possible at the moment. It's going to take a long time for that to happen.
Yeah, I'm thinking hypothetically, just kind of getting the ethics right early on. It just kind of
I think like question. It's not right. It's not right if like a country like someone from Europe or like US stops working with them, because there's so much damage which has been done in the last 100 years, or like probably a few 100 years. And the damage was done like from, to in order to rectify that, it has to be jointly done, because India itself could probably do it, but that's going to take a long time. So this could be done in like 5 or 10 or 20 or 50 years. That probably take like 100 years. And also, like, just so like Indians have been brought into this mindset of like British, that there are these like hierarchy now, like where Indians are ruling Indians, and that kind of mentality is now starting to change, because the brands, like these kind of like Indians, they look up to people from Europe or people from US, and now when the brands are wanting to invest in the farming side of things, or are okay with paying a higher price for better ethical and like sustainable things. Now like these people are starting to change, and let's say if you stop, like hypothetically, if you stop tomorrow, then it's going to be Indians ruling Indians for like a long time, because you know they're starting to change. A lot of these spinning mills, a lot of these weaving mills, they are now like getting COP certifications or like these kind of certifications which brands in US or UK demand for buying something, and that's kind of changing the mentality of someone, or and in turn changing the supply chain slowly. You know, like it's not right. I wouldn't say it's already changed, but at least it's starting. You know, it's something's better than nothing, right?
Yeah.
It's that narrative too, kind of around food, where like, you know, if we're locavores and we're trying to support the local seasonal food boxes. I think I had a conversation with Guy from Riverford, and he was saying like if we import things like sugar or coffee, and we invest in the people who are farming those imports in the same way that we would invest in, you know, our own farmers if we were trying to have a regenerative food system, then when we bring something in, we consume it responsibly. We don't waste it. It's seen as sort of a delicacy because it is, that it came all this way to come and let us have a mango, or let us have some sugar, or let us have a coffee in the morning, and to treat it with some sort of reverence rather than just, it's our consumption, I think, too, that's half of the problem. And then also just the way that we treat the land and the way that we send things across. There's a ship that goes between South America and England, and it brings rum. It's a Swedish ship, and it brings rum and coffee and other goods from the global south. But it's all, you know, it's like a sail ship like pirates had back in the day.
Okay.
So there's zero sort of footprint, and that, but it takes, you know, a couple months for it to come all that way, and you have to pay the crew and all the people fairly who grew the coffee and whatnot. But it's an interesting sort of way of thinking about consuming outside of the countries that we live in, and have it, like, what would that supply chain look like if it was fair all the way?
Yeah, because freight pollution isn't included in the statistics.
No.
Like shipping pollution is exempt from the statistics.
Yeah.
It's just boggling, isn't it? It's craziness.
Yeah, it is. And but that's part of the problem too with this colonial mindset that Nishanth was talking about, where we only look at the parts of the supply chain that would directly affect us, or that you know, we make ourselves feel guilty about. So the way that we pay people to make our clothes, but we're not thinking about, you know, even with fashion revolution, we're talking about who made my clothes, but we're not talking about what kind of dyes were used on my clothes, how were the farmers treated, how was the, you know, microbes in the soil treated.
Yeah.
The full story is just not something that we even sort of connect to, apart from maybe the 12 people on this call and a few others, you know, especially on these islands.
I think like Holly was just saying now, you know, people don't really consciously, they do a lot of the mistakes people make are through like lack of information or lack of education, or just done like without consciousness. Because I was telling her the other day about like, I met like a person who runs a factory, and you know, I saw him, like, I know that he leaves like these chemicals into the water bodies, and he just has absolutely no clue that this water is you know, consumed by someone just a few kilometers down the river. And the reason after 20 years he has like a brain tumor or something is because the water he's been drinking for the last 20 years. There's no direct correlation of these things. And when people don't know what they're doing like directly, you know, if someone's not getting like, you know, if people just would never understand, you know, if there's no direct link to that, like if this person specific knows that, hey, that kid's got something because of the chemicals in your factory, he'd probably like think twice before doing that. You know what I mean? No one's like evil in that way that, you know, someone wants to kill someone, or someone wants to, you know, but it's just like lack of information and lack of education. And the most crazy thing about this is everyone's being educated in the UK, like, hey, this organic, and in US organic, in Germany, and like all these places, like people are talking about these organics. The real education has to be here. Like farmers don't know that the chemicals they're using is what's causing something, like some kind of illness in their system, like, you know, their kids' illness. or like, that kids born in certain way because of they've been working so people have no education here, like, the True Cause documentary, I think would have had a much bigger impact if it was in Hindi and people in India could watch it, or if it was in Bangladeshi or people in Bangladesh could watch it. So I think that's one thing. And I just saw this question: the question is who then is responsible to educate, and what can brands do to support education? And I think it starts with the brands and it starts with the government. There needs to be a certain system, like, if someone does something wrong, if someone steals or someone kills someone, like, he's got to go to jail. There's no way out. It needs to be that level of justice system when it comes to like brands using like chemicals or not paying someone. So if someone finds out that, hey, it's like this modern day slavery in this factory, the brands and the factory owners have to be punished, or it has to be something really severe. And it's so lethargic at the moment that if you're caught like with your factory like completely broken down, or people haven't been paid, okay, you pay them something and come to work next day. That's like an easy way out of things, and it has to be like really stringent when it comes to those kind of things. Like, well, so someone's like, it's again like if you think like that person is indirectly killing someone or causing illness to someone else by leaving chemicals in this river, that's like indirect, like, it's third-degree murder or something. You know what I mean? Like, that's how it should be probably treated.
Well, and that's where I think we were talking about this when we spoke with at the Green Party last week, but ecocide law. So it's this international human rights law where anything that creates biodiversity loss or poisons water, or any act that would be considered an act against the earth is also an act against humanity, since we're part of the earth and the earth is where we dwell. And it's one of those international laws that would make an act like that, like using a poisonous dye or using pesticides, a crime against humanity, and then you would be punished, accordingly. But at the same time, I also think, and actually Safia is going to be on the second half of the call that I was just talking about. So Nishanth was here last week with the Green Party, and next week Safia is going to be there, and some trade union people, as well as Babs Behan from Bristol Cloth. And I think that, as we've seen with the ag bill here in the UK, which I recently shared something on Farm Securitas, most of the MPs who are making decisions about land here or making decisions about trade here have no idea about regenerative agriculture. They have no idea about the impacts of the decisions that they're making on, their own children, on themselves, on the lands that they love. Like Nishanth is saying, most people don't have any idea of the harm that they're causing on a real visceral level. And so I think political parties are also as responsible for the education of, the masses or the government as a whole, communities themselves, like the local councillors that we're going to be electing in 2021 come spring, if that happens. All those people are responsible for educating their communities about the choices that they're making, but the problem is that those people themselves don't have the education. I would argue that most people in the Green Party don't even understand the policies that the Green Party represents. So it's a really sort of, and it's an issue with mindset shift, and it's also an issue of people not being able to systemically think for themselves, which is like, something that should be happening at a level that children are learning to enhance how to connect different bits of information and weave it together. Yeah,
I'm surprised the fashion industry hasn't set up some kind of standard, like a B Corp specifically just for fashion brands, because it would very quickly become a leveler, wouldn't it? You'd have to prove you're fulfilling regenerative agriculture standards and not being ecocidal. So yeah, maybe something like, we need something like that, some kind of like
for
a
sure.
mark.
I think definitely there's a must to do things, because a lot of like the handwoven stuff you get in UK is not even handwoven, there's no way to trace certain things. And I was telling like Holly the other day, like, there needs to be something like fiber trace where you can trace every aspect of the supply chain. Like, some people find that some of our fabrics are expensive, and I know some of the weavers they work with, and they don't hand weave it and they do it on machine, and that's the reason. Like, how do we go prove it? We are not here to call out someone or tell someone off. That's not our responsibility. But if there was a system, it would make it easy for everyone. And Another thing I keep thinking about, like this podcast, every time I, when I think about change and, how like people subconsciously make decisions, because like there's this story of like this rat, it's a true story. And the a family has like a rat pet, and they have it for I think 6 months, and everyone's like so attached, super attached to that rat, and the kids, everyone like in the family loves the rat. And it dies one day, and they have this ceremony where they're burying the rat, and they're doing all these prayers, and like for months after that everyone was like really upset. It's been like one year or something after, they see that there's another rat biting into their food, and someone finds it out, and they set up a rat trap, and they kill the rat with that trap. And it's absolutely crazy, like when you that's the conscious of a human mind. And it all comes down to that kind of setup, where why some people like do things consciously and some people do it unconsciously. Like when you think about like eating a dog, humans have found it like really easy to eat a chicken or like a goat. But when you think about like, hey, I want to eat like a dog steak or something, you'd be like, it's absolutely crazy when you think about that. But yeah, it all comes down to that.
Again, it's that storytelling that we tell ourselves. So Zoom gifted us with another 15 minutes, so that's why the call hasn't suddenly ended, which is nice. Margarita, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah. Hello, good morning, everyone. Nice to see Justine here too. I've been learning a lot with her courses. Chopra, I've been attending all your webinars. I'm also doing the fiber shed course, the 4 sessions. Well, anyway, my question is, I want to set up a social enterprise in Uganda, in a small rural community. I've been talking with some community leaders. I even did a questionnaire to see the women's needs there, the expectations. But this is a new territory for me, and I want to make things right from the early beginning. So the idea is to create a little fiber shed there, just use local materials, namely natural dyes, agricultural waste. I don't think that particular region already grows cotton, but it's something they are willing to do. So basically, my question is, which advice do you have to someone who is just starting and don't have much experience in the area?
I think it's I would say like 3 years ago, I had no experience in textiles. I just finished uni. I come back from uni like 4 years ago or something, and I start something. But it's just having like a definite plan, and not 80% of the things don't go according to your plan, because what we started doing was like a women's wear collection, and things are so much different now. So it's just figuring things out, like probably writing it down, because it's easy to think, but when you write it down, that's when like things where things missing. So figuring out where are you going to grow the cotton, and is there like a spinning setup right next to it you could perhaps use in the beginning, or are there any hand weavers around your place, or are there like natural dyes in place? So you probably partner with every artisan community, and before you start something, you figure all those logistics out, and maybe trial a few meters, or maybe like a couple of acres, because when we started we did like 5 acres. It's like a huge land, but it's also a really small land, and you figure out like what you could possibly manage. For us it was 5 acres, and probably for you it could be 10 or it could be 1. So just figuring that out, but making sure like when you take out the 1 acre of harvest, you need to be sure that that's going to be spun, woven. You need to know all those places, because most people, we found it so hard to spin the 5 acres of cotton, because no one would do such small quantities. That's like 4 hours capacity of a mill, like just 4 hours, like maybe 2 hours, just 2 hours capacity of a huge mill is probably like 5 tons. And I think it's best to like get a yes from everyone before you start it, and also having an alternative, that even if this person's not able to do it, you have another options. And once you have all those things figured out, I don't think it's difficult to do something.
Thank you. May I visit your farm when it's safe to travel again and learn from you there?
Yeah, of course. I'd be happy to have you and show you around. Our farm's open to everyone who's interested in visiting us.
Thanks, Nishanth. And so what are the brands that you're working with? Christy Dawn, Story, MFG, and are there any other brands that we might know that are being supported by the work that you're doing?
We used to do we did some work for Preen by Thornton Prakasi last year. We do some other work from we used to do it for Rich and Alone. We made a collection for Maggie Marlin. She's based in New Zealand. And we are also doing some trials at the moment. We have a lot of interest in the past 6 months. So we are doing a lot of fabrications, but some of the work we are not allowed to say. See, it's coming back to the mindset, the colonial mindset, but I guess it is what it is. You can't change things, you can't demand things right at the beginning, but slowly brands understand. You have to keep communicating, and that's how we communicated with Christy Dawn or Story MFG that, hey, you see where it's nothing you're going to lose. We are your suppliers. I think another set of things is most brands worry that if another brand finds out who their supplier is, probably they are going to capitalize on that as well. And that is, I think, the biggest fear for every brand, for not putting the limelight or overshadowing the work of an artisan community, is if they tell it out. We are already working at full capacity, and they think that, hey, if you're not able to grow with these guys, and if another brand comes in, they'd probably leave us, or things like that.
That's the colonial mindset as well too, though, because it's so competitive. It's not a colonial mindset doesn't allow for a lot of trust, because we're constantly competing with each other to try to gain to climb up that hierarchy above each other, which is not the
competition. I mean, that's why I tell the brands we work with, and that's why I say you're probably competing on the other side of the world, but competing in this side of the world creates a crazy distorted supply chain where everyone's suffering, right from the early farmers to all the way it gets to the consumer. The consumer is not valuing the goods. He's just chucking. He's buying one in each color, and not happy with 3 colors. He's just chucking them in the bin, and that's how things start. For us, we work in a very different way. The brands who work with us, they commit to it 11 months in advance. So when a brand's committing to something 11 months in advance, they definitely have to think through really hard. Do we need these many clothes to sell, or are these many clothes going to sell? No. So they probably, instead of ordering 100 pieces, they probably order 80 pieces. You know what I mean? But when you're in the other way, where you could just go out and buy something, instead of buying 100, they probably buy 150, because they think maybe one colorway doesn't work, so we make another colorway as an option, and we make another colorway as another option, and it keeps
just feeds it. Deep, you have your hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
Yes, you actually pronounced my name right, which is great. Thank you.
In my head, I was like, you probably did that wrong, but I'm glad to hear.
No, I was just really interested to hear your kind of viewpoint on the colonialism and the kind of education, because I'm an Indian in the UK, but in the fashion industry, working inside of a brand, and my job is to influence kind of the direction of sustainability. And I guess it would be really interesting from a brand point of view, from where I'm sitting, how to support that education piece and connecting those pieces together. And I know someone else in the audience was talking about the B Corp, and I've got really I'm really ingrained in that B Corp framework, and I do think that there is a connection already within that framework around regenerative farming, and I just would love to continue to connect and actually find the bridge and the connection and support that, to start to get ingrained within business and help business to understand that, for brands in the UK.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I've actually asked the question, but it's really just kind of like a viewpoint of kind of, I'd like to find a way of helping support essentially, and understanding that route of education further to be able to ingrain it and help build a bridge essentially.
I think it's really important to do that, then demand like a certification from a supplier. I think go working that way really creates like a reciprocative relationship where you learn like something cannot be done right. So you don't, like, the suppliers don't get fake certifications, because I can bet you like 70% of the certifications are like fake. Like you can just go out and buy the certification and just put it on your brand and, you know, it starts selling. But I think it more has to do like with a partnership mind frame, where you should probably like come out and meet the supplier and, you know, stay with them and realize the kind of things they are going through, like, you know, when you put a pressure on them to make like 100,000 pieces in 1 month, then it's not like the supplier who's facing that, it's perhaps like the seamstresses and the tailors and the people who work for them. Like it completely goes all the way down. Even now, like I remember I asked for the price of the cotton and before the lockdown, and after the lockdown, it went up by 3 rupees. 3 rupees is literally like 2 cents or something, you know. And I spoke to like the brands and they were happy to pay like another 2 cents, which is like nothing, you know. And what suppliers don't understand is that they think if they ask for 3 cents more, the brand would stop working with them. So instead of asking them, they have this fear and they're like, no, get it for whatever rates, like, you know, you can't do that. And someone at some point of the supply chain gets affected to meet those 3 cents. You see what I mean? It's definitely not the owners. It's definitely someone who's working for them. So I think it's really important to get on like the ground and get things done. Instead of like paying someone to do it, or instead of getting like a God certification or like a Ecotech certification, they all mean like nothing when you still get them and things are wrong in the factories. Like, you know, like, can God's guarantee that every organic that comes through God's is 100% organic? Like, you know, if they write it on a stamp paper and like, you know, put it through the laws, I don't think they'd ever do that. You see what I mean? Because no, that's not, I think it's really like a partnership mindset where if you're buying something, like the brands we work with, they're like our friends, you know, like I speak to them every day and, you know, they understand what's going on. They come here, they visit us, they stay with us for like weeks. And, you know, it's like, it's more like a partnership. And that's when things can actually start changing on a much bigger level. It's like, when you think about from one's brand's perspective and one supplier, it's a small thing. But imagine like all the brands doing that same thing with a supplier, and it becomes like the industry in itself. Yeah.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions? We should probably wrap it up because I told Nishanth half an hour and now it's been an hour. But since, you know, Zoom randomly gave us an extra bump of time, I thought we'd take advantage of it. Does anybody else have any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself if you want. Don't be shy. Last chance. All right. Well, I really appreciate everyone coming and participating in the conversation. It's really nice to be able to sort of share the conversation as well, and not just have it be me asking questions and have a little bit of a discussion. And yeah, Nishanth, thank you for making time, not once, but twice this week for me and the things that I'm involved with. And yeah, the folks from Fibres who are here, thanks for coming. And everyone who came and donated. Some of the money will go to Fibres UK, and then it's also split between Eco Land Co-op, which gives land access to folks who want to tend land but don't have access to it here in the UK. So yeah, thanks everyone. Have a really beautiful Sunday afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you soon. I'll try to plan the next one for next month sometime. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.